When you look at the world from space, you don't see 200+ squabbling countries. And when you look deeply into nature, you won't find separate academic departments. This beautiful diffusion FRI image came from Friday's AAAS Science. It's about 2 days old in its publication. And it shows the orthogonal grid connectivity of the human brain, of the frontal lobes. The AI community spent decades largely ignoring biology, but now they're paying keen attention to results from neuroscience because those results tell them all kinds of interesting information about how to create biologically inspired computing architectures. There's a big cost associated with not being interdisciplinary. Here's an example from Charles Babbage's analytical engine, which he designed in 1837. He wasn't able to build it because the gears of his day were not precise enough. But if he had had a truly interdisciplinary team, Babbage could have used this device, the relay associated with a telegraph switch, and they could have built a computer in the 1840s. Instead of having the computer revolution start in the 1940s, imagine where we would be if the computer revolution started 100 years earlier. Let's talk about augmentation and the need for it. All of us are surfing in front of a tsunami wave of 1.8 zettabytes, or 10 to the 21st bytes of information. And this is a bit of a problem, because our brains didn't evolve for this kind of information stress. The human brain hasn't had an upgrade in over 50,000 years. And if your laptop or your cell phone hadn't had an upgrade in, say, 5 years, you might be a little concerned about that. And there are real costs associated with the limitations of the brain, not just speed and bandwidth and memory, but also bugs and biases in human cognition. One of them is the base state bias. Let's take a look at this in action. You may recognize this as the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Here, they had a tsunami event, a local event, but they had a bias thinking that the future would be a lot like the past. And they did not build a backup power supply that would enable them to cool off their reactors after just a couple of hours of backup power. They had plenty of water available to do a gravity feed cooling system. So they took a local incident and turned it into an international incident, where 10 days later, a 750 rad radioactive cloud wafted into the western United States and Canada. You may recognize this gentleman who said that human history becomes more and more a race between education and catastrophe. H.G. Wells certainly got that right in his outline of history in 1925. Someone else who also understood this was Doug Engelbart, who's in the middle of the screen there. Doug built a demo in 1968 for DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, where he demonstrated a system called Augment that was all about augmenting group decision-making. Doug, by the way, was the inventor of the mouse. He died recently. He was a dear friend of Singularity University. And 40 years later, we're still working on augmentation systems. This was a workshop at Stanford from March of this year. One of the people in this workshop was Jason Lee, who helped build this system at the University of Illinois, which is a Cave 2 environment that allows you to interact with AI agents or with 3D molecules in a 320-degree field. It's quite immersive and a really worthy augmentation system. You've seen Daniel wearing Google Glass from Google X. This can be used with or without AI agents. Wouldn't it be amazing if our leaders would stoop to wearing geeky glasses like this. It'll never happen. Well, maybe it will happen. You can also use these systems to help you manage your health care. It can give you little nudges about what the healthy things to do are. Of course, you can get too aggressive with this, like the experiment that Microsoft tried with Microsoft Bob, and sometimes you have to be very careful about the nuance in the way that you provide augmentation. Let's talk about AI vectors, how we get there. So we have statistical and deep machine learning, we have task and domain-specific knowledge engineering, and biologically inspired computing architectures. And in fact, most AI systems now use some version of all three. So in this picture, you may recognize Jeff Hawken, who was the key inventor of the Palm Pilot. He also has had a deep interest in neuroscience for several decades, and he created a company called Numenta, which published a system called NuPic, which just this week they opened up for free downloads to the public. NuPic is all about enabling people to build hierarchical temporal memories which emulate the human neocortex. But it turns out that NuPic is kind of difficult to use, so the company renamed itself Grok and created a system that automatically takes data sources from the real world, encodes that data stream using autoencoders, build models of that data, and then can do prediction and anomaly detection. So let's take a look.
As data moves from the human scale to the machine scale, the challenge isn't volume, it's speed. Data never stops flowing, and there's never been enough manpower to stay on top of it. Until now. Grok handles data in real time, taking action at the pace of your data stream rather than the pace of your analysis. So how does Grok do it? By learning the same way people do, through pattern recognition. Grok is software that builds models of your data to make actionable predictions. These predictions can be fed into your control systems to automate multiple processes. Meanwhile, Grok continues to learn, updating and scaling its models continuously based on the data stream. So instead of reacting to circumstances as they happen, Grok allows you to anticipate change, to optimize your response beforehand, and to do it automatically. That means energy companies can meet the demand for power based on real-time usage. Financial firms can better manage risks and discover new opportunities. Server farms can anticipate demand and adjust capacity accordingly. Grok lets you capture the value of your data at the speed of business. Stay in the stream and start profiting from your data in real time.
Just about this time last year, I got a phone call from Dharmendra Moda, who's the director of the DARPA-sponsored Synapse project at IBM Almaden. And Dharmendra said, you know, you might want to take a look at this paper that we just published. It's got the shortest title of any paper that we've ever produced, 10 to the 14th. So what's that about? They had simulated 10 to the 14th synapses and 530 billion neurons of a macaque monkey brain. And that picture in the middle of Dharmendra's team is not just a pretty picture. It is the wiring diagram of a macaque monkey in 383 different brain regions. And they didn't just do this in software. They reduced the simulation to hardware, specifically some neuromorphic chips that they reduced to hardware. Let's go on. We'll have to come back to that. Apparently, you need to clear the cache. This is Watson and the two world champions competing with Watson.
showed the walls had been repaired 17 times. Watson.
What is Jericho?
Correct.
400, same category.
This mystery author and her archaeologist hubby dug in hopes of finding the lost Syrian city of Urkesh. Watson.
Who is Agatha Christie?
Correct. Watson.
Who is Mary Beacon?
You're right. Watson.
What is greed?
Yes.
Let's finish Chick's degree.
And now,
Yeah, so let's take a look under Watson's skull. It has 2,880 core processors in 90 System 750 servers. It had 16 terabytes, 16 trillion bytes of data, and was not connected to the web at the time that it trounced the two world champions in Jeopardy. And it had 80 teraflops, or 80 trillion logical operations per second. That was yesterday's news, ancient history of 2011. The system has moved on, and in particular, it's moved into medicine. So here is Watson giving its best answer about evidence associated with a patient's condition. Watson, unlike humans, is never sure of its answers. It just curates the best one from a set of probabilities. And here is evidence of Watson in a collaboration to learn how to become a physician's assistant in oncology. This is a collaboration with Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York. And IBM is deeply involved in doing this. Marty Cohen will be talking to you about this in a little bit. One of the things that is different from the Jeopardy version of Watson and the medical version of Watson is that the Jeopardy version uses one user, one question, versus 1,000 concurrent users and compound questions. The Jeopardy version is stateless. The Watson medical version is stateful. And in the Jeopardy version, it didn't have to explain its reasoning. In the medical version, it does. So this is a system that did unsupervised learning on 14 million pictures of 20,000 objects. It was built by Andy Ning from Stanford and Google, and Jeff Dean from Google. This system achieved 15.8% accuracy. And you might think, well, that's not so great. But in fact, it was a 70% improvement of what had gone on before. They trained the system on 16,000 graphical processing unit cores, and the system synthesized, unsupervised, this image of a cat. So, the great Greek mathematician and physicist Archimedes said, "Give me a place to stand and a lever long enough, and I shall move the world." But AI is more than just a lever. It is a fulcrum that increases the leverage of all the other exponential technologies that we'll be talking to you about over the next few days. Nanotechnology and biotechnology, 3D printing, digital medicine, all of those areas are vastly amplified by AI. Let's take a look at a result from Microsoft research that came out last week. This is a result that uses AI pattern recognition and the Connect system to allow people to read sign language and produce sign language even if you don't know sign language.
There are millions of people in the world using sign language, and a big part of them are in China.
And right now, we know that if many technology, especially the computer, grow very fast. So from my view, I think it's the right time to develop some technology happen.
This project is a sign language translator. It translates from one sign language to another. It helps the hearing and the deaf communicate.
你喜欢西雅图的天气吗？
You can communicate between American Sign Language and Chinese Sign Language, or potentially any sign languages to any other natural language.
the Connect will capture the sign language and then recognize the meaning of the sign language, including the posture, the trajectory, and then there's an automatic translation into spoken language.
我很喜欢这个
Let's move on.
I really like this.
How many of you flew in to San Diego? Raise your hands. If you did, you trusted your life to an AI, more likely more than one. AIs have been used in the air traffic control system for about 20 years now, but they largely have been used in administrative roles. But now, DARPA is sponsoring GILA, the Generalized Information Learning Architecture, which is actually emulating the problem-solving characteristics of an air traffic controller, a very complex job that is about to become nearly impossible, because in 2015, the skies will be filled with commercial drones doing industrial tasks, and the air deconfliction tasks will become really inhuman, a perfect job for an AI. AIs have been used in the automotive industry for decades now, and they're used in every aspect of the automotive industry, from configuring cars to building them, manufacturing them, diagnosing them, and doing customer service. The first conference on AI in medicine took place in 1975 on the Rutgers University campus. 2 years later, Ted Shortliff published his PhD dissertation at Stanford Medical School. He's a doc who did a PhD on bacteremias and an expert system to diagnose bacteremias. And it was a very successful system and outperformed the physicians whose knowledge it was built with. But Ted spent the next 30 years trying to get the medical community to take notice of this result. In 1980, Randy Miller and his colleagues produced a system called Quick Medical Reference, QMR. And this system produced basically a PC version of an internist program that Jack Myers, an internist at Pittsburgh, and Harry Popple, a computer scientist there, produced in the 70s. That system was remarkably effective. This system did a very good job providing quick medical reference, but it didn't get a lot of traction. There was no web, no gold standard for diagnosis. The systems that it was running on were underpowered, just came too early in the innovation cycle. But now, after 35 years of medicine resisting in one way or another AIs, they're coming in through the back door of the electronic medical record. And in fact, we're seeing them explode in a lot of different areas. This is a system called MedGo, a clinical GPS system, that navigates a patient from a state of unwellness or sickness to a state of health. And it uses over 100 million medical data points. It has 3,000 diagnostic categories and over 6,000 drug categories that it can choose from. It curates over 100 different AI techniques, and it provides this service not just to physicians, but to physicians' assistants, nurses, and yes, even patients. This is a system called Archimedes that provides a full-scale simulation of human physiology and can be used to simulate clinical trials, or can be used in patient care delivery, and also can be used in policy analysis. And now, as Daniel mentioned, Stanford students are getting iPads with their curriculum on them in day one of their medical school education. And in fact, AIs have been built into the teaching program in various ways, including with simulation, in a number of different medical schools. And in fact, there is an American Medical Informatics Association and an International Medical Informatics Association that just had its meeting in India at the end of October. This one, the American version, is happening in November in DC. Worth checking out if you're not familiar with it. AIs have been used throughout the legal profession, from discovery all the way through trial. And in fact, it's been used primarily for administrative tasks. And you might ask, can't AIs do deep legal reasoning? And the answer to that would be absolutely. But in 2007, an AI was cited for the unlicensed practice of law, and they had to pull the site from the web. And we may see this kind of guild behavior going on in medicine as well. And that's why I would predict that when the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize is eventually won over the next 3 to 5 years, it won't be deployed first in the US. It's likely to be deployed in a place of high need and low guild protection, like Africa. You may recognize this as Mycoplasma laboratorium, Craig Ventnor's synthetic bacterium that was built with synthetic biology techniques. It was also built with AI techniques that were adopted by the synthetic biology community. There's an inside joke in AI that if it works, it's no longer considered AI. It becomes the tool of the group that adopts it. That's okay with me. So here's a system that BP built called the BIDE system that identifies microfossils associated with deep oil deposits in the ocean. It saved BP tens of millions of dollars a year. Salim mentioned Kaggle, and this system is crowdsourcing data scientists and data science contests, including the Heritage Health Prize, which is in its second version. The first version was won in June by a group called PowerDot. They got $500,000. Version 2 is a $3 million prize, and it continues. AIs are the leading edge of games today, not just shoot-'em-up games like Call of Duty and Halo, but also serious games like The Fate of the World from Red Redemption that puts you in the driver's seat of a world with pandemics and illiteracy and war, and you have to decide how to manage that world and allocate resources. The largest AI project in human history was the Kalo project, the cognitive assistant that learns and organizes. This was a system that was designed to emulate a Radar O'Reilly-like character from the movie MASH. The idea is an assistant to a commander in the field, and it was so successful that SRI, which was managing the project, spun out Kalo as a private company, which was snapped up by Apple as Siri less than a year after they launched. And Siri makes lots of dumb mistakes. If you've used it, you know all about this. There are whole websites associated with the dumb mistakes that Siri makes. But what you're seeing in Siri today is just the tip of the iceberg of this class of system. Google has its answer to Siri in Google Now. It can be used in conjunction with Google Glass, and it utilizes the power of massive data that Google has available to it. AI is going to revolutionize education, not just with one laptop per child, which has already been superseded by a $35 tablet system, but also one computer per child, one computer tutor per child or adult learner. And in fact, massive open online courses are exploding on the web today. There's a whole ecosystem composed of Coursera and Khan, Udacity, and edX, all around bringing education to millions of people that didn't have access before. AIs are also used in battle management and situation assessment systems. This is Command Post of the Future from DARPA. You might think, why would we talk about a military system like this? What's the relevance? And the relevance is, after a public health disaster like the earthquake in Haiti, you can use systems like Command Post of the Future to do rapid situation assessment and logistics planning. AIs have been sponsored by governments and Fortune 1000 companies around the world, and the reason is this. This is the value added of AI that I curated from about 360 different AI applications. I won't read them to you. The most important one is expanding the range of the possible. Not just better, faster, cheaper, but different. Tim Berners-Lee, the father of the World Wide Web, suggested that we annotate URLs or web pages with URIs, or Uniform Resource Identifiers, to provide metadata about the individual data items on web pages. And there's been quite a lot of work done on that, as you can see. These are all linked list data sets. But it turns out that most of the data on the web are dark and messy and not so neat. And that is precisely why Peter Norvig and his colleagues at Google published this paper on the unreasonable effectiveness of data, which was all about being able to get great results from massive amounts of data and modeling that data using machine learning techniques. Wired magazine came out with a cover story saying artificial intelligence is here, but it's nothing like what we expected. Well, I don't know exactly what they expected, but they probably thought that AI scientists thought that the world would be neat and tidy, and most AI people know better than that. And that's why some of them are now focused on artificial general intelligence, which instead of the narrow intelligence that is application-specific, task-specific, or domain-specific, it has the broad, deep, and subtle intelligence that we associate with human intelligence. We'll be able to reverse engineer the brain using a variety of sensor systems, like EEG systems, this electroencephalograph that looks at weak electrical signals on the scalp, or fMRI, which I showed you that beautiful image from Science, the Friday edition. You can see that in a high-Gauss magnetic field, you can look at the blood flow of people doing specific cognitive tasks, see where that blood is going, and map the brain in various ways. And you can use that information from brain mapping, like Dharmendra Modi did in the case of the macaque monkey. This is a backroom view of his operation, to do something really extraordinary. Dharmendra and team published a set of 4 papers, a real tour de force, in the last couple of weeks. They not only produced a neurosynaptic core, but they published a true north architecture about how to align those neurosynaptic cores into a network. They built a new programming model called a correlate programming model. People use the term breakthrough or paradigm shift in a kind of glib way, but they actually did something extraordinary here. They used that correlate programming model in another paper where they had developed 100 algorithms using that programming model and applications, and they published a conceptual model of cognitive systems that can be built from these chips. So if you unravel the surface area of the human brain, you'll get something about the size of a dinner napkin. And once we can build artificial neocortex, and we will be able to do that, we can not be constrained by the cage of the skull. We'll be able to build systems that have the surface area of this room, or San Diego, or California, or the US, or the planet. And you might think, wow, isn't that excessive? Do we really need all that computing power? And the answer is absolutely. The reason is that if you look at the accelerating wave of knowledge, you can get the clicking to happen. There we go. This is a graph from the Public Library of Science. And this shows that if you look at all the different areas of science and technology and the way that they're connected, you might be able to master 2 or 3 areas. Maybe if you're exceptionally brilliant, 5 or 6. But you're not going to be able to master all of these nodes at once, and that's the requirement, because the truly innovative areas are going to be found at the edges between these different fields. And that's a perfect job for an AI. We'll be able to interact with these deep AIs, these artificial general intelligences, using systems like the Hyperwall 2 system at NASA, very high bandwidth displays, or build a skin around our corporations, or the planet, or our bodies that have millions of sensors and the ability to use AI to interpret the signals from those sensors. Let's look at some implications. We spend a lot of time on this during our summer program. We don't have time to get into this very much right now. But if you've been listening to what I've been saying, you might be a little bit creeped out and think, whoa, can't these systems become surly or perhaps malevolent? And if you have that concern, that's a worthy concern. It's not something that I stay up late worrying about, but I think it's something that we need to address. And I think if we look at all the ways that AIs can go bad, a large number of them have been anticipated by the AI community or by the science fiction community, and we should at least design against those scenarios. If we do that, we'll be well beyond the 80-20 rule. And if an event happens where an AI has done something bad, chances are it won't be a black swan event. It'll be something that we could have anticipated. There's always the possibility for something unanticipated, but we owe it to ourselves and those around us to be responsible and design ahead for the scenarios that we can see. So I often tell our students that sustainable human intelligence requires mathematical, ecological, and ethical literacy. We have a whole talk on that and several workshops on that in our longer executive program. But let me just say that it is possible for us to manage technology in an ethical way, but it requires giving a damn about doing that. So some breakthroughs that you can expect to see: an AI winning the Tricorder X Prize and outperforming a team of doctors, AIs co-authoring papers, AIs doing unsupervised learning, co-designing other AIs and nanotechnology. They already demonstrate some superhuman ability that's going to get better. AIs generalizing at human levels or above. And the hardest thing on this list, AIs operating at human levels in social situations, a truly challenging task. So some controversies. Many people think that AIs will cause unemployment and poverty for the masses. They certainly will cause some unemployment. Poverty, I think, is really a function of what we do with the massive amounts of wealth that get generated by AI and other exponential technologies. We'll have abundance at our disposal. It's a question of how we choose to distribute it. AIs will turn malevolent and want to eliminate humans. I think that's unlikely. That's sort of our own neurosis. AIs will prove impossible to control. No, I don't think that will be true, but we'll have to see. The jury's out on that. Or AIs will cause doctors to lose their diagnostic skills. That may happen with some of their diagnostic skills, but at the same time, their diagnostic skills will be vastly amplified. So some misconceptions that AI will automagically solve the global health challenge. There's a lot of public health issues that are not encompassed in just improving diagnosis and treatment options. We're going to have to do a lot of work on the public health front and the economic front to solve the global health challenges we face. AI is replacing doctors in all patient care simulations. Many people are interested in human touch. AI is already smarter than humans, just in some narrow areas. Or advanced AIs will be like human intelligence, only faster. No, they will be truly different. And some tools and resources that you can look at for keeping up with the field. You can get this slide from, we'll publish this for you. So thank you very much. Really, I'll have time for some questions. Thank you.